Well, it's that time of year again where I remind my small subscriber base that I haven't died just yet. A lot of things happen in my personal life in 2024, some of which are sadly carrying over into the new year, so that combined with working on too many projects at once kind of slowed video production to a crawl. Despite that, I was able to finish off all of my gaming pledges this year, so we'll be talking about all those along with all the other games I played in 2024, old and new. Well, newer. I haven't actually played anything that released in 2024, but honestly, did you expect any less from me? It only seemed appropriate to start off the Year of the Dragon by continuing my venture into the Dragon Quest series. Rest in peace, Toriyama. Dragon Quest II improves on the original in a lot of ways. You can fight more than just one enemy, assemble a party of 3 characters, all with their own inventory, and apparently this was the first JRPG to introduce enemy item drops rather than just money and experience. Magic keys, which were a one-time use item, are now replaced with free permanent keys that always work on their corresponding locks. Not to mention that there are more save points than the starting castle of the original, meaning you don't have to trek halfway across the world just to pick up where you left off. Sadly, the Switch version is based off the mobile phone remake, meaning that my pride in solving the riddle to find Ra's mirror was quickly shot down when the game showed me exactly where to look. And I have to admit, I don't remember as much about Dragon Quest II as I do the original. Like, the original Dragon Quest was an epic journey where you slay a dragon to rescue a princess, play a fairy flute to lull a golem to sleep, and combine magical rain and sunshine to build a rainbow bridge to the villain's lair. But all I remember of Dragon Quest II is ruined castles and level grinding. I was so excited to see that the continent from the original game was just a little ways to the right after you obtained the ship. But disappointment soon set in when I realized that most of the old locations were gone. I get that this was due to memory limitations of the original Famicom version, but I would say that less is more in this case. I would have preferred something new rather than just nostalgia bait. It was an odd experience where I didn't just have conflicting thoughts, but downright contradicting ones. I enjoyed my time playing Dragon Quest II, but felt empty when looking back on the journey. It was like I was going through the motions of another day at work, which I'm sure wasn't helped by the more streamlined experience of the mobile/Switch version. I'd still like to continue my journey for the Dragon Quest series, but given the mixed opinions I've heard about the HD 2-day remake, oh man, it was made in 2 days. Given the mixed opinions I've heard of the HD 2D remake, I think I'm gonna find a way to play the original Super Famicom version of Dragon Quest III first. I still recommend playing Dragon Quest II, but that recommendation comes with a big asterisk, since that recommendation is more for gaming historians who want to see where all the classic JRPG tropes came from. With my brother moving out of the house last year, we've had to make our gaming nights last as long as possible. Yeah, being an adult sucks. Our first endeavor was going to be Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, a remake of the cult classic co-op game for the Super Nintendo, but unfortunately we hit an immediate roadblock with that plan when we learned that the co-op mode was locked by default, requiring you to first finish the single-player story mode. Thankfully, we did learn of a cheat code that was patched in to lift that restriction, but it still feels backwards to have to earn the right to play with 2 players in what's supposed to be a co-op game. I also learned later that you have to unlock the easy mode. Why? Thankfully, these odd decisions don't take away from the gameplay. We both had enough fun that we made it to the end in just a couple of hours. Sadly, even with the Konami code, you still have to play the story mode to unlock the new characters, so we never got to try them out for ourselves. And unless you or a friend are willing to play through the single-player story mode more than once to unlock everything for a full co-op experience, you might just want to play the Super Nintendo game. Another co-op game we played was WayForward's Spidersaurs. It's no secret that the team at WayForward are huge Contra fans, which is why I'm surprised it took them so long to make their own Contra clone. The setting, characters, and art style emulating old Saturday morning cartoons actually reminded me a little of the old Ninja Turtles, though that might just be because I had Shredder's Revenge on the mind. A part of the fun came from the weapon types because they're actually different between the two playable characters. For example, when Victoria grabs the spread shot, it works just as you'd expect. But if you instead grab it with Adrian, it acts more like the shotgun ice from Mega Man X. While my brother and I had some trouble with the later levels, we both kind of agreed that it felt like the difficulty was to mask just how short the game really was. It only took us 3 hours to complete 6 stages, and I think we could have beaten the game faster if it hadn't crashed during stage 4, causing us to start over. We thought of maybe playing more for the purpose of trophy hunting, until I saw the trophy for beating a stage without standing still, alongside the trophy for beating the game without taking damage. I'm so glad I came to my senses and stopped being a die-hard achievement hunter years ago. For roughly $20, I could think of worse ways to spend an afternoon. Or a Saturday morning, I guess. Then, as all game nights do, the sibling rivalry kicked in and it was time to break out the fighting games. We started with some of our favorites like BlazBlue Chrono Phantasma and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2, until we started looking for games in my collection to release from their shrink-wrapped prison. It's clear to me that JoJo All-Star Battle R is a love letter of a game made for JoJo fans, with a massive 50-player roster and a ton of Easter eggs for those that know the series. Oh my god! That said, neither my brother or I have ever read or even watched JoJo, but I almost think it kind of turned out for the better that way because it led to some genuinely funny reactions. Oh shit, he got me. What the fuck? Why is there a Velociraptor in the bear carcass? Sadly, the single-player experience loses its charm fast. Without a story mode, you're stuck playing either arcade mode or all-star battle mode, which are just preset fights. What doesn't help is that the game has no cross-platform play, no rollback netcode, and the Switch version doesn't even have online play. So your best chance of having a good time with this game is hanging out on the couch with other JoJo fans. Or, in our case, a couple of JoJo cherry boys. And of course, because my brother is a massive Demon Slayer fan, he made me play CyberConnect 2's Demon Slayer game with a name I'm not even going to try and pronounce. It's so freaking long. We used to play the Naruto games from the same company, and I love Asura's Wrath, so of course I had high hopes for it. But because I hadn't finished Season 1 at the time, I was forced to play with no new characters unlocked. Matt, I love ya, I appreciate you protecting me from spoilers, but why are we playing a fighting game with only 5 characters? You have no idea how quickly I got bored. From what I played of the story mode, it's a great way to re-experience your favorite moments from the show with that dopamine-pumping gameplay that I expect from CyberConnect 2. But I think the character roster was my biggest disappointment, and I'm not just saying that because I was stuck with only 5 characters for so damn long. There are only 31 characters, which sounds decent enough, but most of them are either reskins or have similar fighting styles, making a lot of characters feel very similar to each other, and a lot of them are DLC. It doesn't help that despite the partner system, demon characters are forced to fight alone, with the trade-off being that they deal more damage. But that kind of emphasizes the lacking roster in my eyes. I guess you could do worse in terms of anime arena fighters, but I haven't felt the need to play again after trying the final roster. A part of me is hoping that this is some kind of first game syndrome and the upcoming sequel can pull me back in again, but the other part of me doesn't want to hold their breath. In preparation for my Final Fantasy VI replay, I decided to finally give the 3D remake of Final Fantasy IV a shot. Now the good news is that it's basically an enhanced version of the original game, which is great because I love Final Fantasy IV, but there are some changes that I'm not the biggest fan of. Cecil's Darkness ability is now a generic attack boost instead of an HP having AoE attack, which kind of takes away the original risk versus reward factor. Cry now has the defense of all enemies instead of increasing the chance of stealing from them, which was already pretty niche considering Edge and Porum are never in the same party together. And axes can be equipped with shields now, so again, less risk for rewards. The bad news is, this recent playthrough made me notice some of the flaws of Final Fantasy IV's design. The game is deceptively open world. Technically you can go anywhere you want, but even with the airship, there's not much to do outside of the main story. Edge's ninjutsu feels pointless, considering it's basically weaker black magic, and you recruit him shortly after getting your designated black mage and summoner. And this was the hardest pill to swallow, because I used to praise this scene where Rosa casts teleport to get everybody out of the collapsing tower. It's a great way to show the player that you can do just that if you need to leave the dungeon. Until you realize that the game locks the use of teleport after beating most dungeon bosses, because the next plot point is back at the dungeon's entrance and we can't have you missing that. Unfortunately, this game also punishes fans who are familiar with the plot. Maybe not directly, but it's time to explain augments. Augments are consumable items that you can use to teach characters new abilities. As somebody who's played the original more times than they can count, I know that not every party member you recruit makes it to the final battle. So of course I'm gonna save my augments for my final party, but oops! Turns out some augments are only obtained when you teach at least 2 skills to the temporary party members before they're forced to leave. Meaning I have to play the game all over again because I don't have the augments for my plan to fight the super boss. I don't know whose idea this was, but I'm willing to bet it's the same guy who made the Soul of Rebirth in the Final Fantasy II Advanced version. Time to embrace the darkness, kid, because I need to teach this hardened dragon soldier that it's okay to cry sometimes. And yet, despite all its flaws, it's still in my top 5 for Final Fantasy games. I still recommend Final Fantasy IV if you're looking to get into the JRPGs. The JRPGs. I still recommend Final Fantasy IV if you're willing to get into JRPGs, but I recommend you find a way to play the PSP Complete Collection. Not only is it an enhanced remake of the GBA version, complete with all of its exclusive dungeons, but it also contains every chapter of the After Years sequel series and an exclusive interlude chapter that connects the two, so you're getting a lot more content than you'd expect. One day when rummaging through my game collection, there was a game that caught the attention of my little nephew. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Sadly, I can only talk about what was available in the first world, since that was as far as we got before it was time for the little guy to go home. But my first impressions can be summed up by what my nephew said when I asked him about the game. Zelda is fun. He meant Kirby, but you get that. I won't lie, I had doubts that a fully 3D Kirby game could work, yet I couldn't help but smile when we got to a new level or rescued some Waddle Dees, and I was so proud when my nephew managed to figure out the mall maze all by himself. But nothing could compare to the joy I felt laughing along with the little guy when we came across all of the various mouthful abilities. I can't wait for when we can play again, but I'll definitely need to play again for myself once we're done. I made the mistake of letting my nephew be player 1, so naturally he skipped through every line of text and cutscenes because any second he wasn't in control made the game a bore in his eyes.
That was a hell of an explosion. You okay, player?
I got ran over by a truck. What you think?
Oh, quit being a bitch.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why I got the sudden urge to play Saints Row, but I played it. Some of you who are introduced to the series by the third or fourth game might have had your ears perk up a bit at the mention. Oh, you mean that stupidly over-the-top and hilarious series where you get a weaponized dubstep gun and punch people in the dick as Laura Bailey quips one-liners? Not quite. Saints Row had much more humble beginnings as a Grand Theft Auto clone. Or so I'm told. I've never actually played a GTA game myself. And yeah, I say more humble instead of more serious here because it still takes the piss a lot of the times, dude. I mean, the Wendy's parody is called Freckle Bitches, and you rewatch cutscenes in a peep show. Oh god, are peep shows still a thing? Please don't make me explain peep shows. I tried my best to follow the story, but I guess game-based turf war stories just don't interest me very much. And outside the classic insurance fraud mode, I found most of the activities pretty frustrating. I was going to joke about how I'd only ever play this game again to hear Keith David's luscious voice, but Keith David's a prominent actor I already hear in my favorite media regularly, so I guess give it a try if you're curious like me. When updating my backlog, I was surprised to realize that I've never actually played the original Metal Gear Solid in any shape or form. I used to tell myself it was because I never had the means to play it, but the more I looked into it, the more obvious I was misled. I mean, there was the PS1 Classic version on the PlayStation Network, the PlayStation Classic Mini Console, the PC release on GOG, the Master Collection that was released a couple of years ago. There's the Essential Collection for PS2, which I never even heard of before writing this video, so I guess that's gonna get added to my collection at some point, and wait, can't the PlayStation 2 play the original game already? You know, I have no one to blame but myself for this. I used to play the Crash Bandicoot trilogy on this exact same PS2. Yep, sure enough, there it is. I don't really know what to talk about here because, let's face it, everyone knows Metal Gear at this point. Hell, just mentioning Metal Gear probably had you thinking of Snake's iconic voice. David Hayter, dude. This wasn't his first voice acting role, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that this was the role that put him on the map. When you think of Solid Snake or Big Boss, it's that low and smooth voice that you're thinking of. The one that says, oh, well, wait a minute, he played Captain America in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon? That's one of my favorite Spider-Man shows. How am I only learning of this now?
Okay, team, let's make the world safe for democracy.
I couldn't help but notice just how much more flirty Snake was compared to the other games, though. Like, I know James Bond was an inspiration for his character and all, but come on, Snake, this is a sneaking mission. You're supposed to be discreet.
How did you recognize me in disguise?
I never forget a lady.
So there's something you like about me, huh?
Yeah, you've got a great butt.
I admit, though, it was fun to see Snake and Otacon's budding friendship firsthand. It made me appreciate the two a lot more when I replayed Sons of Liberty. I don't remember if I was able to survive the torture scene or not, but ultimately, it didn't matter. My disc was scratched in a way that froze the game on the end credits, so I couldn't carry over my special items if I wanted to, and I had to look up the after credits scene on YouTube. But the damage could have been worse. It could have been much, much worse. Even with that aside, though, I don't see myself coming back to this game. Like, don't get me wrong, it was fun to finally visit this classic that might be the main reason I became a stealth game junkie to begin with. But the controls are so stiff in this game. It probably doesn't help that I've been fighting ages of muscle memory from playing Sons of Liberty and Snake Eater, but I really felt it in the first Sniper Wolf fight. And sure, the whole Psycho Mantis reading your memory card bit is fun and all, but I know how it works now. There's nothing to be surprised about. I guess it's only a matter of time before I find a way to play the Twin Snakes remake and see what makes it so polarizing among fans. Yo, hold on, Rob Paulson plays Gray Fox in the GameCube remake. How am I only learning of this now?
Good night, everybody.
Speaking of PS1 games, after years of it reappearing on my radar, I finally decided to cave in and play Ape Escape. I have to admit that when I learned that this was the first PlayStation game to require a DualShock controller and that the right stick wasn't used for camera controls, I went in with low expectations. But I have to admit that it was a lot of fun to run around chasing monkeys while swinging my butterfly net with the analog stick, or spinning it around to activate a turbo-powered hula hoop. There's even a RC car that you can control independently from your character. These gadgets and more make for some fun puzzles and level progression that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. I'm not the biggest fan of 3D platformers, I much prefer 2D ones, but Ape Escape might just be in my top 10 somewhere. I've heard that the PlayStation 2 sequels play with the right stick in a similar way, so I'm excited to see how the series continues when I eventually add them to my collection. Ah, we finally got to one of my pledge games from last year. I was wondering where they were hiding. The Secret of Monkey Island has often been described to me as a masterpiece of computer games, and the reason why point-and-click adventures became so popular. So I figured it was finally time to sit down and play it for myself now that I've gotten into the point-and-click genre. I played the 2009 Special Edition, which allows you to play either the remake or the 1990 CD version. I decided to play the classic version, not just because I wanted to experience the original game, but the Special Edition remake had a very clunky inventory system that was just frustrating to work with compared to the originals. Like, how do you screw up inventory puzzles? The game focuses on Guybrush Threepwood, a spry and very naive man looking to become a pirate. That's it. That's the only motivation we have. Guybrush just says, I want to be a pirate, and the other pirates are like, okay, you've got to complete the free trials, but watch out for the evil ghost pirate LeChuck. Yay. Little fun fact, my first exposure to Monkey Island was actually through Thrillville on the PlayStation 2, where they used songs from Monkey Island and even Outlaws of all things in some of the mini-games. Though that might not surprise some of you, considering the setting for The Secret of Monkey Island was famously inspired by the Pirates of the Caribbean theme park ride in Walt Disney World. So I guess putting music from that game into a game where you build your own theme park only made sense. And while it greatly predicts the film franchise, it kind of has that same spirit as well, trying to make you laugh constantly through fun and witty dialogue and wordplay. Instead of sword fighting, we have insult sword fighting. It's a bit tedious.
You fight like a dairy farmer.
How appropriate. You fight like a cow.
Yeah, it's iconic and all, but to sit through it several times while trying to learn new insults got a little tiring. Now thankfully, despite the game's age, I found most of the puzzles to be pretty logical, and the answer was usually there if you just looked for it. I can only think of one time I got frustrated, but it wasn't so much with the game as it was with myself. I seriously don't know what I'm missing here. Oh my god, there's a prize in the cereal. Why didn't I think to check the cereal? I've heard some people complain that the game takes a bit too long, but my first playthrough only took 5 hours. I think it just feels slow to them thanks to the more tedious parts like the insult sword fighting and the trek across Monkey Island. Pro tip for that last one, click on the locations and screen transitions, it helps you move much faster. And yeah, I'm telling you to go play The Secret of Monkey Island because, that's weird, there's no conclusion written here, it's just a sticker that says, ask me about Loom. Oh, son of a bitch!
Masterpiece of fantasy storytelling, beat the rush! Go out and buy Loom today!
Well, I guess monkeys and pirates go really well together because I also played Zack and Wiki Quest for Barbaros's Treasure, a puzzle game where you play as the chocolate-loving Zack with the help of his flying monkey companion Wiki and the Sea Rabbits crew in a race against the prestigious but bratty Captain Rose to find the legendary pirate captain Barbaros's ship said to still be on Treasure Island. Luckily, and very conveniently, Zack and Wiki happen upon the animated skull of Barbaros himself and agree to lead the duo to Treasure Island if they can find and piece back his body together. It's got a lot of charm in the animation, puzzles, and all of the different items that Wiki can transform enemies into. Zack and Wiki was both a great time, but also a frustrating one. I found the puzzles to be fun and creative, and a lot of different levels stick out in my mind thanks to that. And it's fun to interact with items using the Wii remote in so many different ways. That said though, guys, the Wii was a magic time. Really though, I wish you could use a nunchuck to move instead of pointing and clicking because there were so many times where I got a game over from an easily avoidable hazard because, for whatever reason, the game decided that the spot I clicked on couldn't be walked to. Not to mention all the times I was robbed of a perfect score or had to reset the level because the motion controls were just not recognized for whatever reason. I shouldn't be forced to reset for losing in a sword fight in a puzzle game just because the motion controls decide to take a nap. It is far from perfect, and I think the initial charm of the game combined with the thrill of solving a difficult puzzle is gonna be the make or break for you. Fair warning though, this game does not know when to stop making noise. Because I've been on a huge Dragon Ball kick these past couple of years, of course we have another Dragon Ball game this year. Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Tenkaichi. Now, if your ears perked up at the sound of another Dragon Ball Tenkaichi game, you're gonna want to sit down for this one. Because despite its name, Ultimate Tenkaichi has nothing to do with the Tenkaichi series. So why is it called Ultimate Tenkaichi then? Because the fans got to vote on the final name. You know, I was gonna make a joke about how fans will always let their nostalgia win, but wow, the other names in this poll suck. Now, the big selling point of Ultimate Tenkaichi was the ability to create your own character. Oh, wow, this game came out 4 years before Xenoverse? How have I never heard of this? Alright, it's time to create the Ultimate Namekian! Earthling? Oh, you can only make Saiyans. Okay, I guess it's time to pull Parsley out of retirement. No, you can only make male Saiyans. Cabbage. This is Cabbage. If the game's going to restrict my creativity, then I'm not going to even try. Look at all of 2 hairstyles you can choose from. This makes no sense to me. Why have a character creator where you have to unlock the majority of your base character cosmetics? The guys at Team 4-Star used to enthusiastically call this game Rock Paper Saiyans, and after playing the game for myself, I don't believe that's a good analogy, because in reality, it's a coin flip. The main gameplay loop is to win these combo clashes so you can build your super meter and launch special attacks. That's pretty much it. Now, to be fair, they did try to balance this out by having you use your ki for a chance to reduce or even straight up avoid damage from special attacks. But basic attacks have a chance to drain ki, meaning as long as you rush down your opponent, they'll never get the chance to charge up or even hold on to their ki. Every character has the same strong attacks, the same ki blast, the same free chain combo that leads into a 50-50 coin flip of a chance to do more damage. I hate to say this, because I know people are gonna fight me on this, but I think this is worse than Final Bout. Because for as slow and clunky as that game is, it's still a game where everyone is on an even playing field and you can get better through practice. Meanwhile, in Ultimate Tenkaichi, the luckiest player wins, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Some of you familiar with this game might be surprised that I have yet to mention the fact that your create a character can become a Super Saiyan. And that's because I found myself losing more fights anytime I used this transformation. Not only was the 10% attack boost barely noticeable, but it also takes about a quarter of your ki to use. So if I transform with any less than full ki, the computer opponent would use that opportunity to fire a special attack at me, and well, reduced damage is still damage. Oh yeah, there's also a story mode. It sucks. It's a retelling of the anime up to the end of GT, and not only is it done with this annoying-ass gameplay, but there are also giant battles, which are atrocious. You're forced to stand in place while you attack, and it is borderline impossible to react to attacks because they're so poorly telegraphed and you can't dodge during attack animations. There's also a second story mode starring your create a character, which is the worst kind of fan service. How do we exist in a world where both Captain Ginyu and Omega Shenron are alive, but Goku is dead and the Dragon Balls are back? You remember how GT ended, right? I don't recommend this at all. There are better fighting games out there. There are far better Dragon Ball games. In fact, just play Raging Blast 2. I've only played a few minutes of that game, but it seems to be everything this game was trying to be. You know, this past decade, I've really grown to appreciate Sega's line of rhythm games. Phantom Thief, Space Channel 5, and this year, my first Samba de Amigo game. Samba de Amigo Party Central. Apparently this game came out on Apple Arcade and the MetaQuest VR headset. I just played the Switch version. I don't have the room for a VR setup, and does anyone have Apple Arcade? I'm genuinely curious. I can't speak for everyone's experience, obviously, but I found the Joy-Con motion controls to be quite responsive. Except for this high five minigame, I don't know why. It's the only thing in this game that I have trouble with. I'm a bit mixed on the soundtrack though. Like, don't get me wrong, they have some great pop songs in here, but come on. It's called Samba de Amigo. Where's my samba music? Instead, I'm shaking my maracas to Bon Jovi. Though I can't help but try to mimic the exact poses that they show. You don't have to do this, it's just as simple as positioning the Joy-Cons in that direction, but like, come on, I'm playing a dancing game. How can I not dance? You can argue that that's me making my own fun, but it can be a good workout. I am starting to get a bit more health conscious at my age. But like I said, there's some great songs in here, something for just about everybody. Let's take a look. We've got Vamos a Carnival, a returning song from the series. Baka Mitai, not very fame, but I guess it's popular. And, bring it back, Sega! I honestly didn't intend to make this into the Year of the Monkey, but that's kind of how things turned out. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is apparently an updated mashup of the first two Monkey Ball titles, so it might have actually been a better introduction for me than I realized when picking it up. I don't know how to best describe the Super Monkey Ball franchise without asking you to, well, just look at this. You roll around in a ball on these huge physics puzzle courses that can be absolutely insane, and maybe a little hard to wrap your head around. And no, you aren't restricted to just monkeys, there are other popular Sega characters you can unlock. Though you aren't rolling the character so much as just tilting the stage to help the ball to the course. You can collect the bananas if you want to, but there's no live system, so they're really only currency to unlock more levels and characters. I can definitely see myself coming back to try and finish the rest of the levels because I actually unironically love physics-based puzzles, so Monkey Ball is a real treat when I decide to pop it in. Oh, look who else is here. That reminds me.
Jet Set Radio!
Jet Set Radio was another one of my pledge games because even if you aren't familiar with the game, you've likely seen its influence somewhere. You play as a juvenile street gang that are in turf wars with free rival gangs, and your goal is to skate around the city, tagging areas in your graffiti while avoiding the police, who will eventually sick attack helicopters on you because they can't just arrest these kids. Vandalism is illegal and punishable by death. Oh my god, is that why Professor K runs the pirate radio station? He's a wanted criminal, he's been trying to warn us!
I burned my house down. What should I do now? How should I know, fool?
Or maybe not. Now each member you can play as has different stats. Power, which is actually health. Technique, which is both speed and the amount of points you get doing tricks. Graffiti, which is the amount of points you get per tag. And one that the game doesn't really tell you, which is the number of spray cans a character can carry. It's a good idea for what Jet Set Radio is, allowing players to find the best character to get that high score with. But it makes some of the playable characters feel really bad in comparison. I want to play as Piranha Dude, but she's like the worst at carrying paint cans. She feels impossible to get anything done with. Now, is it just me, or would the graffiti minigame have been much better if it was more rhythm-based? That might sound like a bit of a biased statement considering I was talking about how much I love Sega rhythm games earlier, but like, come on man, we've got this funky music playing, the characters are rarely seen not dancing, it just makes sense, right? You can also create your own graffiti and, I don't want to call it limited, because if I've learned anything, it's that artists can make any program work, but it's also really awkward to draw with an analog stick that I don't really have the patience to work on anything other than simple shapes. Boom! Graffiti design is my passion. Now the controls, these are hard to explain because movement is awkward to handle, but starts to feel much more fluid when you actually get the hang of it. I've never tried roller skating before, but something tells me it feels similar to this. I can practically feel the way of Combo steps as he walks up these stairs with them. There's also this odd decision to put the spray paint action and the center camera function on the same button, which doesn't seem like a big deal while you're painting from a fixed angle, but then there are these missions where you have to tag an enemy's back, and now that you have a moving target with a slight refresh for each spray, you have a sickening effect from the camera constantly repositioning itself. A part of me is really hoping the problems I had are some form of first game syndrome that was improved with Jet Set Radio Future, but I'm not about to go looking for an original Xbox to take that chance. Jet Set Radio is definitely something worth experiencing for yourself, but I'm saying this as somebody who still remembers that era of extreme sports and the too cool attitudes of that generation's youth. So I don't really know how this game will fare for the younger generations. Although, I guess skateboarding did make a comeback recently, so maybe Jet Set Radio will as well?
Looks like the Gigi's have filled the streets of Kogane Cho with their graffiti. Those froggies turned right back from the little tadpoles and swam away as fast as they could. Ribbit, ribbit.
そうくん氏と安楽氏、奥のみは?
相変わらず日本語分かってねえな。
This might come as a surprise to some of you considering my praise for Yakuza 0 and Kiwami a few years back, but I had been intentionally holding off on playing any more Yakuza games for a while in an attempt to combat any possible burnout from playing the same style of game for too long. So I figured, what better time to get back into Yakuza than the Year of the Dragon? Kiwami 2 is a remake of the PlayStation 2 original, so the story takes place a year after the first game. Hoping to put the Yakuza lifestyle behind him to raise his adopted daughter, Kiryu is unfortunately dragged back in when his former clan's newest chairman is assassinated, threatening an all-out gang war between the Tojo clan and the Omni Alliance, setting him off on a mission where he'll meet new friends, old allies, and a new rival dragon as an adversary. I found the combat wasn't as stiff as Kiwami 1, and they thankfully did away with the Kiwami mechanic that tended to slow the fights down, but it kind of had an adverse effect this time around. Now fights can end super quickly, and without the different fighting styles to switch between this time around, it makes all the boss fights feel samey. Especially when playing as Majima. Oh, I'm so sorry, Majima. But of course, it isn't a Yakuza game if there isn't some silliness to distract you from the more serious story. Play a couple rounds at the golf course, manage a cabaret club, which frankly feels a little forced in this time around. Take on a variety of sub-stories, one of which may or may not involve doing voiceover for a yaoi audio drama, and then hit the arcade where they even have games at the urinals. I'm not sure I could even tell you which Yakuza I prefer at this point, considering each game I've played so far has been hit after hit. These past few years I've seen Yakuza fans coming out of the woodwork to state that, no, you don't start with Yakuza 0. Yakuza 0 is a game made for the fans, and you need to play up to Yakuza 5 to get all the references. But take it from me, the guy who started with 0, it stands just fine on its own. And if you still think otherwise, Kiwami 2 has a new mode that continues Majima's story from 0, so I really don't think there's a wrong entry point at this rate. Now, unfortunately, I can't talk about every game I've played in depth, so I'm gonna have to do a quick little lightning round. After renewing my Switch Online subscription, I decided to finally download the Super Nintendo library and give Paddle to Pawn a go. Now, I grew up playing the version we all know as Tetris Attack, so the only thing new to me here was the fairy characters that were replaced with Yoshi's Island characters for the international release. I was surprised to learn that the original story involves the fairies teaming up to fight a Demon King, but I think your overall preference will depend on if you favor the fairies or Yoshi and friends as eye candy. I also used the opportunity to play Kirby's Avalanche, but was disappointed to learn that it was not only a basic Puyo Puyo game, but that the legendary Savage Kirby quips spawned from the game were greatly exaggerated. I also finally gave Tetris 99 a chance, and it's alright, but I find it weird that even with a Nintendo Online subscription, you still need to buy the full version to enjoy everything it has to offer. Gyro Mark of the Wolves is a fun, fast-paced arcade fighter that I definitely mark high on my list of favorite fighting games if I had more time with it. Godhood was a game I bought in my never-ending itch to find the perfect God game, however my PC often struggled to run it during the combat sessions. I also found a message after finishing the game that said the game was still in early access, which is not mentioned on the store page, so what gives? This year was also the year of the Sega for me, apparently, because I also played Panzer Dragoon for the first time this year via the remake on my Nintendo Switch. And while I had fun with this little arcade shooter, I think one playthrough was good enough for me. Since I played Metal Gear Solid for the first time this year, I thought it would only be appropriate to finally check out Merry Gear Solid. It's a fun little Christmas parody of Metal Gear that took me about 20 minutes to finish, but I'd recommend giving it a try, if for nothing more than that ending theme and the admittedly funny delivery of the kids' lines.
Santa Claus? Santa Claus!
I used some of my Christmas money to quickly buy and play through Marvel Spider-Man's The City That Never Sleeps DLC. While it was fun to play more of Insomniac's take on Spidey gameplay, it was a lot more of the same from the base game, making it feel a bit repetitive if you play through it all in one sitting like I did. I found myself a physical copy of Cuphead, which came with the Delicious Last Course DLC. I'm literally just realizing that abbreviates to DLC. The bosses are great and there's some nice platforming challenges, but I found Miss Chalice's moveset to be different enough that most of my deaths came from fighting off muscle memory. A wonderful little cherry on top of an already great game. I played Fortnite because my nephew really likes Fortnite. So every time he'd come over, I'd have to suffer through several rounds of Fortnite. It has an audience. I'm just not a part of it. Aura Kingdom was a decent-looking anime-style MMO that I decided to check out after hearing high praise for, but dropped after a few days of playing when nothing seemed to be keeping its hold on me. I might be willing to go back if I somehow rope some friends into the game, but there are other MMOs higher on my priority list. Lightning round's over, but speaking of MMOs, a couple of years ago I talked about Wizard 101 and how I was pleasantly surprised by the overall quality of the game. And well, I renewed my subscription for the game recently and got a message saying that I could save money bundling a Wizard 101 subscription with a Pirate 101 subscription. And you know what, that's fair. I have a lot of fun playing Wizard 101, so it only makes sense that I give its sister game a go as well. And for the most part, it has the same production value as Wizard 101. The world feels alive as it changes when you finish a quest, and all the characters are very well voice acted. Instead of choosing a school of magic to be proficient in, you are asked free questions when making your character. Where did you grow up, which increases one base stat depending on your answer? What crime were you arrested for, which determines your class? And how did you lose your parents, which is the only one that isn't immediately relevant as it's only for recruiting a companion whom you won't even meet for the first few hours. While Wizard 101 uses a turn-based card system, Pirate 101 uses a turn-based strategy system for its combat, where you and other players move your characters and team of recruits to fight enemies. There's different forms of cover, interactive objects, and special abilities to pull off. So another pleasant surprise. I was expecting something similar to Wizard 101, but instead I got Fire Emblem. Or maybe XCOM is more accurate, but I've never played XCOM, so I wouldn't really know. Also, the first boss of the game is a Vin Diesel parody named Finn Dorsal. I didn't know where else to mention this, it's just weird. Now, if you remember when I talked about Wizard 101 in 2022, you might remember I criticized its use of premium areas despite knowing that a free-to-play game needs to make money in some way to stay active. But believe it or not, it's actually worse in Pirate 101, because one of these premium areas is the prologue. So you make your character, you make your way to Skull Island, and you already have to pay to finish the quest. That's not free to play, that's a demo. And that's what makes recommending Pirate 101 so difficult at the end of the day, because it's a fun game I could see myself going back to, but the free-to-play aspect is practically non-existent. So give it a chance the next time there's a free membership week, because otherwise, I don't think this tutorial will completely sell you. You know, it feels weird that this new decade seems to be the start of my MMO arc. You'd think I'd have played more MMOs back in high school or during that 6-year unemployment period where I had more time than I knew what to do with, but no. I decided to start playing them again in my now late 20s after getting a job that has demanded the majority of my attention. Oh my god, is this what a midlife crisis feels like? Hopelessly clinging on to the things that you enjoyed from your youth so that you don't feel trapped in your otherwise mundane life, just another cog in the machine forced to repeat the same thing day in and day out until you break down and accept your fate. Or maybe it's because I've been watching too much of Worst MMO Ever by Josh Strafe Hayes. Could be either one, really. That's how I discovered Fallen Earth, a post-apocalyptic RPG that apparently had a good bit of hype behind it before it died and was revived as Fallen Earth Classic. I say apparently had hype behind it because whenever I try to look up guides for stuff later in the game, I find nothing. Nothing but new player guides, first impression videos, and a bare-bones fan wiki. Not even anything on the story, which actually has a pretty promising start. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to scour for other people's footage to borrow because an unannounced server migration caused the game to go kaput for the unforeseeable future. So you are a clone that has not much longer to live because the Hoover Dam was destroyed, and with no power, the cloning technology used to effectively keep you immortal is slowly failing. And if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself. Or pay for it. I know what some of you are thinking. Wow, a post-apocalyptic shooter where the Hoover Dam is a major plot point? Sounds like they took a bit of inspiration from something much more popular than them. But Fallout New Vegas actually came out a year after Fallen Earth. And on the topic of Fallout, this is basically everything I could have wanted from a Fallout MMO. A wide-open wasteland to explore alone or with friends, dark humor, and questlines that can range from collecting DNA to make the cloning process more stable, or fighting off an open-book cult who has come to kill you because you disliked their favorite book, and I didn't make that last one up. One of my favorite quests I've run into so far is given to you by a banker, who hired some workers to build a house for him, but the local wildlife is giving them some trouble. So you kill all the enemies, check on the foreman, and he says, "Gee, thanks, asshole, now we actually have to finish the job," because he was already paid and he had the perfect excuse to not finish a house for someone he doesn't even know. I love it. It's just a shame that this game wasn't popular enough to be documented more. They recently announced a remaster for the game, but what does that mean for the original? Will the remaster be faithful? Will they pull the plug on the servers? There's a part of me that really wants to do a Let's Play so that at least the main story gets archived, but I don't know if my computer could handle all the space needed for footage, especially with all the bugs and server lag. I don't want to harp too hard on the server lag, considering Little Orbit was basically just given a game to maintain with very little experience with the source code, but it's noticeable. It's a regular complaint on the official Discord server, and it's not something that most players are willing to deal with. But aside from the server lag, there's a few other problems. Melee combat feels floaty. There's no weight or impact as your weapon just casually passes through the enemy. You can equip 6 weapons at once, but swapping between them is a bit cumbersome in the heat of the moment. The best way to get level-suited equipment is for crafting, which is fine on paper, but some items can take days to craft, meaning you're going to spend a lot of time leveling up your other skills and farming resources in between. I haven't gotten past level 15 yet because this is an old-school MMO that expects you to play with friends and dedicate pretty much all of your time to it, but I want to see where this goes. I want to see how the clone plotline continues. I want to see if the endgame areas are just as stunning as the starting plateau. I love you, Fallen Earth. I only regret not finding you sooner because I'm sure we could have made some great memories in your prime. But I'll settle for the memories we can make now. Fallen Earth is like an incomplete jigsaw puzzle. It's not perfect, but it's constructed enough that you can see the bigger picture. There's a couple pieces missing and the corners are worn out, but it's a beautiful picture. A big, flawed, but beautiful picture.
War never changes.
I mean, yeah. Considering how much I enjoyed DKC last year, I had to play the sequel. Diddy's Conquest, named so because Diddy's the star of this one after Donkey Kong is forced to take a back seat after being kidnapped by Captain K. Rool. I guess he got tired of being a king. And instead you're joined by Dixie Kong, who isn't as strong as DK or as quick as Diddy, but she can jump higher and do a little helicopter spin with her hair, so she's definitely the best at finding secrets. Not that I really noticed the higher jump though, since the Kongs have this new team-up technique where you throw the other monkey to nab items in those hard-to-reach places. And oh boy, are you gonna need it if you choose to 100% this game. Oh, sorry, I mean 102% this game. Because not only are the bonus rooms pretty well hidden this time around, but they can be brutal, and I think the devs realize this because there's nothing stopping you from just re-entering most of them after you failed. You also want to recruit the help of your animal buddies from the returning Rambi, Ungard, and Squawks, the latter getting a full rework, and some new ones including my personal favorite, Squitter the Spider, who can use his webs to act as platforms and take out enemies like Spider-Man with impact webbing. I'm also just now realizing that this could also be the year of the pirate with the Kremlin's pirate motif. Also, this enemy's laugh sounds like that one football meme from a few years back, and I can't get it out of my head now. And dude, David Wise must have magic fingers or something, because this soundtrack is just so funky. Gotta admit though, I have a hard time placing each song to the levels. Not that I dislike the levels this time around, there are a lot of them that stand out in my mind, I just couldn't tell you what song plays where if you asked me. And I know there's at least one person who will be watching this that's very enthusiastic about this game and would likely like to hear me say that I love this game as much as they do, but I don't know, man. Diddy's Conquest falls into that weird category of sequels for me where I can see it as the technically superior game, but it somehow lacks the magic I felt when I played the first game. Huh, funny, I remember thinking the same way about Banjo-Tooie, which is also developed by Rare. I mean, I still enjoyed it. Look at the tier list, it's high up there. Maybe I shouldn't have tried for 102% on my first playthrough, or maybe I should have just gone to bed instead of spending 3 hours on the Captain K Rool fight. Whatever the reason, this was my experience, and I can see myself replaying it, just maybe not as much as Donkey Kong Country. Alright, time for some Beyond Good and Evil. This one's a little funny to me because I shared some clips of glitches I encountered on Twitter, or X I guess now, and Tanuki Player chimed in with some concerns asking, oh god, is this the 20th anniversary remaster? I had no idea what she was talking about, so I looked it up and oh, the 20th anniversary edition came out 1 month before I played Beyond Good and Evil to positive reviews. I see where the confusion came from. But no, I played the 2011 remaster for the Xbox 360 on my Xbox One, so it's possible that the bugs I ran into could be a result of the backwards compatibility, because I noticed that happens a lot more on Xbox consoles for some reason. Okay, so you play as Jade, who is a photographer, journalist, orphanage caretaker, martial artist, secret agent, assassin. Okay, what the hell can't she do? Well, maybe her diverse resume explains all the varied forms of gameplay here. We have a 3D action combat stealth game with puzzles to solve, collectathon elements, hovercraft races, and first-person photography. That's a lot of different styles. I'm getting Sonic Adventure flashbacks. What surprised me though was how fluid all the different gameplay styles fit together. Like, it didn't feel like a chore to have to snap a picture of the wildlife after fighting off hordes of enemies or shooting down aliens from the hovercraft. Sure, combat can feel like a repetitive button masher, but most fights don't really last for very long. I thought the story was fine, nothing groundbreaking, but just enough to keep me invested. It's a basic government conspiracy story where the military just so happens to arrive once the problems have already passed, making people believe that they might be in league with the aliens. This causes Jade, with the help of her uncle Paige, to join a rebel alliance to sneak into facilities and snap pictures to expose this conspiracy. It may sound like I don't have much to say about this game because I don't, but I really wish I knew about this game earlier in my life because 8-year-old me would have been all over this game. I grew up playing games like Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights and SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, so having something to scratch that PlayStation 2 collectathon itch would have made me a happy boy. And I do think it still holds up well today. I can see why this game is so beloved by people, and after seeing what happens for myself, I can definitely see why people want that sequel. Hey, Ubisoft, you gotta stop showing teasers before the games are anywhere near finished. It only takes 6 months for hype to die down. And speaking of, hey Bethesda, where's Elder Scrolls 6? It's been almost 7 years. Hello? Anyone there? Todd Howard? Ubisoft guy who works at Ubisoft. While I wasn't one of those fans that waited 16 years for the continuation of Psychonauts, I was still pretty hyped when Psychonauts 2 finally got a release date. But it was also one of those games where I wanted to play in the right mindset before diving in so that it would have my full attention. I'll try not to spoil too much of the story, but things escalate quickly, and it's a lot more personal for Raz this time around. But it's still lacking the charm of the original game in a way that I can't quite put my finger on. Well, okay, I will give one small spoiler. We actually get to meet Raz's family this time around, and while I liked seeing and interacting with them all, something about them felt off, like their subplot was all thought out, but the execution was rushed when the team realized, oh right, Raz has got to do stuff outside too. Just like in the original game, you're diving into people's minds to help fix their psychological problems, and I absolutely loved every mind level in this game. Some I found just as, if not more creative than the first game. It's just unfortunate that the first level has a phobia warning for dentist imagery because I found it just as cool as it was disturbing. It's also where you get acquainted with all your old powers and how they've been reworked. Use your levitation to glide, use your pyrokinesis to burn posters, and use your telekinesis to rip the teeth out of the gums and throw them at enemies. Jesus fucking Christ, Tim. Telekinesis has a new use as well. You can use it on certain enemies to search for their weak points. And speaking of combat, oh, I really like the combat in this game. It kind of feels like Spider-Man or the Batman Arkham games where your psychic powers act like the gadgets, plus it's fast-paced and adrenaline pumping to keep you on your toes. Though maybe a little more clunky at times. There's also this equipable badge system that can alter your moves, which is a fun idea on paper, but you've got to buy upgrades to increase both your wallet size and the number of currency you can find, so I didn't get most of this stuff until the endgame. Poor Raz, though. He was made an official Psychonaut in the last game. His dreams came true, his head held high, and the minute he comes to their headquarters, he gets demoted to the intern position. God damn. That is painfully relatable. That poor bastard just got a taste of the real world and... Wait a minute, that's it. That's why this game feels so different from the original. It's because all the old fans have grown up now and Raz is being forced into the real world. He's put into the intern program despite being promised his dream job. He's being bullied by his peers despite the more professional setting. He has to come to terms with the fact that his heroes aren't as amazing as he thought they were. It doesn't feel like the original game because it's no longer about a runaway circus boy becoming a psychic and stopping a bizarre brain-snatching operation. In a way, it kind of feels like the game is all about growing up. Not just for Raz. By the second half of the game, it feels like Raz takes a backseat for Agent Crawler, and I don't know if that's what they were going for, but I honestly think it works. Psychonauts 2 may not have the same charm that the original had, but it's still a good sequel, improving where it counts, offering a unique visual experience that you won't find anywhere else, I'm sure, and one I recommend you do not sleep on if you enjoyed the first game.
Bah! Slightly better than a mouthful of nails.
So after finally finishing Dark Souls, it made me want to try out more From Software games, which is why I pledged to finish Demon's Souls in 2024. I kind of wish I didn't now. Also, I know that it's Demon's Souls, '(s) Demons, but everybody I know calls it Demon's Souls too, and I think it's just because it rolls off the tongue a lot better, so I'm probably going to keep calling it Demon's Souls from here on out. The story is a bit more straightforward compared to Dark Souls. Basically, the Kingdom of Boletria greatly misused magic to the point that it drew the attention of the Old One, who's basically an old god from Cthulhu mythos. And the world is shrouded in a deep fog, birthing soul-eating demons as a result. Now it's up to you to take down the Tyrant King and find a way to stop the Old One because your soul has been bound to the Nexus, meaning you basically can't die. Time to go kill some demons. Now this game has what's probably the biggest risk for dying that I've seen so far. When you die, you're revived in your soul form, where your max HP is cut in half until you can restore your body. And another disadvantage, which I'll get into later. I'm gonna jump the gun here and just say that I really wanted to like this game. Everything started out fine at first. I took down the Phalanx and the Tower Knight no problem. Thought maybe my past experience with Dark Souls was paying off. But then I got my ass kicked by the Armored Spider, then the Flame Lurker, and the Demon God. Oh my god, I have to talk about the Demon God. You have to break the rubble to get to these ballistas that fire on him, but he does this thing where he grabs the wall and prevents you from progressing so he can punch you. Okay, I just have to dodge his punches, I thought, but the punches were seemingly random on where they impacted, and sometimes this would happen. Like, what the fuck? I knew I was missing something, I just couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until I went onto Reddit of all places and saw some guy saying, dude, the Dragon God is the easiest fight in the game, you just have to wait for his eyes to turn yellow. I'm like, eyes to turn yellow? What the hell is he talking about? And it turns out that this is a fucking stealth mission. It's just so poorly conveyed that you'll have no way of knowing unless you happen to be hiding behind the first pillar. Which, by the way, he can punch through that too! What about the in-game messages, you might be asking? Well, the helpful ones don't always appear, so if you skipped this part to avoid spoilers, good luck figuring out this shit on your first playthrough. Then there's the Swamp of Sorrow. It's a poisonous swamp that also slows you down, and you can't roll in it, meaning that if you aggro one of the big guys that aren't slowed by the swamp, you're gonna die. Now, Dark Souls had a similar area called Blighttown, but not only is the Blighttown swamp significantly smaller, but in Dark Souls you could find an item to make traversing the swamp easier without having to jump through hoops such as World Tendency. What's World Tendency? To put it simply, every time you die in your human form, the game gets harder. And the more bosses you beat without dying makes the game easier. Let me remind you that outside of your human form, your base HP is cut in half. I always hated the phrase, get good, because it's not actually any form of constructive criticism, and it's usually just to belittle a player. Not in Demon's Souls though, because if you don't get good, the game doesn't get good. You can see in my footage that I'm playing as a magician class, which is often frowned upon by the Souls community because it's seen as the unofficial easy mode, and I don't fucking care. I'm not about to suffer through the game again to satisfy a group of people who likely don't want to have a meaningful discussion with me anyways. This game made me so upset I had to go outside and take a breather, yet Demon Souls made me touch grass. And let me remind you that this is all coming from somebody who loved Dark Souls enough to do a fist-only run. So the fact that I couldn't have fun with Demon Souls tells me that something's up here. Demon Souls is a game I can only recommend to the diehard From Software fans that want to see what's essentially a beta version of the Souls formula. You'll find many familiar mechanics, but most of them won't have been fleshed out properly until Dark Souls. The penalties for death, the checkpoint system, the annoying-ass poison swamp. Just go play Dark Souls. I'm not just saying that because I think it's the better game. I genuinely think that you need to ease yourself in with some of the newer entries before you can jump into this mess. So, never mind, I looked it up after finalizing the script, and the general consensus seems to be that this is the easiest of the Souls-like games, so, what do I know? I'm a guy nearing my 30s who still plays Wizard 101. So y'all remember how I said I didn't play a single game that came out in 2024? I actually managed to sneak one in, a single game from 2024. There are very few games nowadays where I feel the need to just drop everything I'm doing to play them day one, but when I saw that the creator of Helltaker just quietly released their newest game onto Steam, I decided to spend my next day off on what I thought was gonna be another playful puzzle game. Instead, I spent a whole Saturday trying to finish the game on hard mode. As it turns out, Awaria is actually a fast-paced action time management game, where you have to repair shield generators while ghost girls are trying to kill you. And unlike Helltaker, it was actually designed with that faster motion in mind, so I didn't have any issues with the game eating my inputs and causing unfair deaths. That said though, I did eventually switch to using a controller during the final level to try and react faster because this game is still really hard and requires some insane reflexes. I am genuinely glad to see that the creator is not only continuing with their newfound passion, but also seems to be improving on it as well. Oh, and did I mention that just like Helltaker, this game is also free to download? It's got puddin' pies. While everyone's automatically thinking of Baldur's Gate free whenever Baldur's Gate is mentioned, I'm one of those weirdos that goes, nope, gotta start with the original, so here we are, Baldur's Gate. I feel it's important to point out that this was actually my very first BioWare game. While BioWare are considered long-lost kings of the RPG genre now, growing up I only ever heard people talking about Mass Effect, which I never grew an interest in, and I was flat out told by others to avoid Dragon Age because apparently the second game was bad or something. So I just kind of decided that BioWare games weren't for me as a result. And before you go pointing at Metacritic scores, I tend to trust close friends more than I do a bunch of faceless numbers. But the massive hype for Baldur's Gate free made me deadly curious about the older games, so it was off to GOG! By the way, I'm specifically talking about the Enhanced Edition because it was the only version I could find, and I didn't even know until writing this video that there was a code I could redeem to download the original version. Yes, I am arrogant, but you can handle this and we can still get along just fine, okay? This is also the closest to my first Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is a little sad considering my growing interest in D&D over the years. The game starts with booming music as this tall, armored figure mercilessly kills a man while in search of something just vague enough to be interesting, until you hear the original game's dialogue and learn that they removed a huge context clue for reasons I still don't understand. Next is character creation, and I can only imagine how this must feel for the TRPG fans to build a character because there are so many things to take into consideration. Druids must have a neutral alignment, rangers must be good, paladins must be lawful good, but thieves must not. You also need to decide how you're going to handle multi-classing, since your experience points are divided between each class and all have different level up requirements. Now if you'll excuse me just a moment, I have to roll 90 for my stats. Ah, son of a bitch. Next is skill points and proficiencies, and if you choose a spellcasting class, some spells for your spellbook. Now I picked core rules because for some reason I thought that'd translate to original rules, and I finalized my character. A true neutral, half-elf fighter mage, and it's off to the Sword Coast to get my ass beat. Combat in this game is hard, probably not helped by the fact that I played with the core rules, but it wants you to play tactically. Oftentimes, charging into battle will just lead to your death, so I found myself quick saving often before a fight so that I could try and get a grip on how powerful the enemy was so I could plan accordingly. Not to mention, this is still a Dungeons & Dragons game, meaning that sometimes you'll just get a bad dice roll. This might sound very frustrating, but I actually didn't mind it. There's just something so thrilling about it all, the uncertainty of if I'll succeed even with all of my magic and potion buffs. Though I wouldn't be surprised if the memorable quotes from all of my party members helped keep my sanity. Many of the companions in this game have their own set of goals, and if you fail to help them with said goals, they'll leave the party. And you know what? I love that. It makes the in-game party members feel more like actual people and not just pawns on a chessboard that bend to your will. Ajantis, the lawfully good paladin, will eventually attack any evil-aligned characters that are in the party with him, forcing you to pick a side. The flirtatious thief Corin eventually falls in love with Savannah, meaning that if Savannah leaves the party, Corin will follow after her. Just because you can recruit somebody to your party doesn't make them your friend. It doesn't mean that they're completely loyal to you. Two of my favorite companions are Johira and Khalid. They're a married couple, which of course means that they're a package deal, but they're also complete opposites of each other. Where Johira is fearless and brave, Khalid lacks confidence in himself, stuttering over his own words even as you send him charging into battle. So of course I made him my main tank.
Yes, if none are better.
Then there's Minx, an absolute fan favorite. Minx is a berserking ranger who carries a hamster named Boo with him and believes him to be a, quote, miniature giant space hamster. He's voiced by the legendary voice actor Jim Cummings, which isn't a big surprise considering all the great performances under his belt, but it will be infinitely funny to me because I know him best for his role as Winnie the Pooh.
Go for the eyes, Boo! Go for the eyes! Run!
Oh, bother. Now, your own goals aren't exactly clear from the start. You know that you're being hunted by assassins, but you don't know why. You're just thrown into an unfamiliar world and told to look into everything yourself. You're given ideas on where to go, but the game never forces you into that direction. It lets you get to know the world before deciding if you care enough to want to help out. I'm going to share a little story from my first experience with the game. It contains a minor spoiler for the early game, but I'm talking about it to show just how alive this world truly feels, so, you know, skip ahead if you want to experience it for yourself and all that. I had just barely survived an encounter after my sword broke, and then Khalid's sword broke, so I thought that meant weapons had some kind of invisible durability stat and started carrying extra weapons around as a result. After a while, however, none of my weapons were breaking and I had more swords than necessary, but why? I hadn't done anything differently at that point. But I did. It was because of the Iron Crisis. Any metal weapons you obtain before resolving the Iron Crisis has a chance of breaking on hit, and it's fixing this problem that improves the weapon quality because the blacksmiths are able to work with proper quality iron again. I love this. It makes the Iron Crisis more than just a plot point. It's a form of world building that directly impacts the player through both their action and inaction. I can't remember the last time I played a game that did anything like that. Well, not to this amount of detail at least. Baldur's Gate might be my favorite RPG now. The combat is fun, full of nail-biting challenges, the characters are all unique and stand out with their stories and interests. Even as we speak, I want to play it again. I want to see what I missed. I want to try playing as an evil illusionist, a lawful good paladin, recruit all the companions that I couldn't before, see what effect my choices have on the game's world, but I can't, because this game sucked so many hours of my life away that if I did, I'd never be able to play anything else, and that's all ignoring the fact that the game ends on a cliffhanger that ties directly into Baldur's Gate 2. I want to play this again, but I need to see how the story of the Bald Spawn ends. And let me remind you, I have no nostalgia for BioWare, which is why I'm being sincere when I say that. If you've never played Baldur's Gate before, I implore you to at least try it. Build a character, play the campaign, and experience your companion's stories for yourself. Just remember,
you must gather your party before venturing forth.
Final Fantasy VI. Where do I even start with this one? I'm not just saying that as a cliche, by the way. I genuinely don't know. I guess let's start with the fact that I got one of those Super Nintendo classic mini systems, and I didn't even know that Final Fantasy VI was on that console when I pledged to replay it in 2024, so that was a fun series of events. My original plan was to play the GBA version first and then play the Super Nintendo version if I had the time, but the opportunity to play one of my favorite games with a controller that felt just as I remembered from my childhood was just far too tempting to pass up. Unfortunately, I accidentally deleted my save file just before the final boss, but considering the original version doesn't have a post-game of any kind, I was content with just ending it there and moving on to the GBA version, which was what I was looking forward to playing in the first place. I admit, I found myself not liking the soundtrack this time around. It was likely more jarring considering how close together my two playthroughs were, but the GBA version was so compressed that I was tempted to just turn all sound off altogether. Which is a shame because Final Fantasy VI has a great soundtrack. When I heard the song that plays in South Figaro, the nostalgia hit me immediately. It was like coming home from a long trip. Combat is standard JRPG fare using the active time battle system introduced in Final Fantasy IV, and just like Final Fantasy IV, each character plays a specific role in the party rather than the job system of previous games. What I like though is that each character has a skill unique to them. Sabin, who fights like a monk, can use special moves by inputting Street Fighter-like button combos, Cyan can charge his Bushido stance for different sword techniques, and Realm can use her Pictomancy to mimic enemy attacks, just to name a few. Don't use that last one on the Super Nintendo version though, it's prone to corrupt save files. That said, however, and it pains me to say this, all those unique skills become overshadowed by magic, which all but one character can learn. Sure, you could try your luck with Setzer's slot machine, or you could just go full Magnus Sisters Delta attack with your free highest magic characters. I actually cried more than a few times when playing this again, and I'm not ashamed to admit that because Final Fantasy VI has a way of building up characters and events to hit you with that tidal weight of emotions. Terra learning the true meaning of love, Locke learning to accept the loss of his true love, Cyan coping with the untimely death of his family, Celis's moment. I think my only character gripe was with the Figaro brothers. Maybe that's because I'm the oldest brother in the family, but I feel that Edgar and Sabin don't get enough time to come off as the loving siblings that they're supposed to be. I don't know if I'm alone in that statement, and I probably never will. Final Fantasy VI is the one game that I never watch or read reviews on because I don't want to hear what other people have to say about it. I don't care if it's positive or negative, and I don't even fully understand why. I'm sorry, Johnny, I love you. Maybe it's because this was the closest example of what I considered to be a masterpiece in my childhood, and it only seems to be getting better as I've aged. Its themes of love and loss, its lively and desolate open world, its villain that you just love to hate. It's a game that, despite its style, simply doesn't age a day. Whew. Okay, I'm finally done with this weird year of the Sega Dragon Pirate Monkey, but I have to get started on this year's pledges as soon as possible, because I'm going all in this time. That's right, I'm going to try and finish 10 games from my backlog this time around, along with an extra game to replay before 2025 comes to an end. I hope editing doesn't take me too long this time. I also like to suggest a game for my viewers to finish in a similar manner for no real reason other than because I can. So let's get the viewer challenge out of the way first. I'm about to make you all feel old for a moment because 2025 will be the 10-year anniversary for The Witcher 3, Fallout 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, and yes, even Undertale. So I felt it was only appropriate to make the viewer challenge for this year be a game that was also released in 2015. That's right, your challenge is to finish, nay, complete, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. Okay, bad joke, I get it. No, I'm gonna go with something a little more obscure this time. Prepare your peanuts for Timbo the Badass Elephant. Rescue POWs and take down the Phantom Military to save Shell Shitty. Shell City. Rescue POWs and take down the Phantom military to save Shell City while causing pure destruction along the way. A 2D platformer said by director James Turner to take inspiration from Metal Slug, Donkey Kong Country, and Yoshi's Island. If the name James Turner sounds familiar to you, that's because this game was developed by Game Freak, so it might actually be worth checking out. You can get Timbo the Badass Elephant on Steam, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series XS. Now, with all that out of the way, here are my 10 games I pledged to finish in 2025. Baldur's Gate 2: Shadows of M. Transistor. The Witcher. God of War for the PlayStation 2. Uncharted: Drake's Fortune. Trauma Team. Sonic Free and Knuckles. Ori and the Blind Forest. Yokai Watch Free.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the Charming Tribe!
You're charming, you're charming, oh my darling! Charming! 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 Yeah! Banyan!
And lastly, I Am Alive. And for my 2025 replay, I'll be going back to see if my love for Batman Arkham City still holds up. I hope I'm not biting off more than I can chew this time around, because I never actually considered a punishment for if I failed to complete my pledge. That's future me's problem. Here's to another year of gaming, and I hope to see you all here again. Same Lime time, same Lime channel. Oh, come on, I ended it with Batman. What else did you expect?